Slicing. In this video, we will learn how to slice strings into smaller strings. In the previous video, we learned about indexing and how we need to use indexes to extract individual characters from the string. For example, suppose I declare a variable named x and set it equal to Minnesota. And now suppose I want to extract the second character in that string so that I can print it out. In that case, I will need to type 1 as my index, since 1 is the index of the second character in the string. When I execute that, I'll get lowercase I as my output. Now, suppose I want to extract more than one individual character from the string. Suppose I want to extract the first 3 characters so that I can print them out all together. One way to do that would be like this, where here I take the first 3 characters, index 0, 1, and 2, and concatenate them together using the plus operator. When I do that, I get capital M, I, N as my output. Now suppose, however, I want to extract the first 7 characters. Once again, I could use the same concatenation approach, but in doing so, not only will my code become much more tedious to write, it'll also become more tedious for programmers to read. Fortunately, Python provides a much more efficient way to do this, and it's called slicing. If the first 7 characters is what I want, this is how I would express it. What this notation is saying is start at index 0, then go all the way up to, but not including, index 7. The reason I did not include index 7 is because that's the index of the 8th character. We don't want the 8th character. We just want the first 7 characters. So to do that, we start at 0, then go all the way up to, but not including, index 7. Thus, if I type this in my program, then print it out, the output will be capital M-I-N-N-E-S-O. Here's another slicing example. In this example, 0 is not our starting point. Our starting point is index 2, and we're going all the way up to, but not including, index 6. When we type this and print it out, we get N-N-E-S as our output. Now suppose I want to start at index 3 and go all the way to the end of the string. There are several ways I can do that. The first way would be to simply type 3 and 9 as the endpoints. Again, the reason we type 9 is because the last index is 8, and we want our endpoint to be 1 above the last index. This is one way to do it. Now, suppose we don't know the length of the string. Then another way to do this would be to type the length of x as our endpoint. The reason this approach would work is because, as stated in the last video, the length of a string is always 1 above the last index. So in this case, the length of x would also be 9, thus giving us the same result. We could also use an arbitrarily large number. When slicing, Python does allow you to go out of range. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get extra characters. It just means that the Python interpreter will go as high as it can until it reaches the last character, which in this case would be index 8. That all being said, if you know your intent is to go all the way to the end of the string, the best way to do that would be to simply type 3:. Whenever you type just the starting point and no end point, the Python interpreter will assume that you want to go all the way to the end of the string. Thus, when we type this out, print x 3:, the interpreter will interpret that to mean start at 3 and go all the way to the end, giving us this as our output, N-E-S-O-T-A. Now, it must be noted, typing 3:, is not the same as simply typing 3. When I simply type 3, I'm telling the interpreter that I simply want the character at index 3. That's not what I want. I want to go from index 3 all the way to the end, so I need the colon. Now recall the example that we looked at earlier, where we wanted the first 7 characters of the string. In this example, 0 was the starting point. Whenever 0 is a starting point, the 0 is optional. So another way I could have written this would simply type :7. When you type :7, the Python interpreter will interpret that to mean that we want to start at index 0. Thus, when I print this out, x:7, the first 7 characters will print out. Characters 0 all the way up to, but not including, index 7 will get printed out. Now, it goes without saying, typing :7 is not the same thing as simply typing 7. When you simply type 7, that means you want the character at index 7 and only that character. Likewise, Typing :7 is not the same as typing 7:. Totally different meaning. When you type 7:, you're stating that you want all characters starting at 7 all the way to the end. That's not what we want. We want to start at 0 and go all the way up to, but not including 7. To do that, we need to place the colon before the 7, before the end point, not after it. We'll close this video by showing how slicing can be used to scramble strings up. Here's what I mean. Consider the following print statement. In this print statement, we have 3 slices of x. Let's examine each one by one. Okay. The first one says 3:5. That means we want the characters starting at index 3 all the way up to, but not including 5. Thus, the Python interpreter will replace that slice with the characters at that actual location, then move on to the next slice. Now we have :2 as our index. As stated earlier, when no starting index is given, that means 0 is what we want. So the Python interpreter will get all characters starting at 0 all the way up to, but not including 2. It'll then replace the slice with the characters at that location, then move on to the next slice. Now our index is 6:. That means we want the characters at index 6 all the way to the end of the string. The Python interpreter will replace that slice with those characters, and thus we have now evaluated all 3 slices. The Python interpreter can now proceed with the concatenation, giving us this as our output.